Welcome to Faire les questions. I'm going to cover lots of information today about questions, and hopefully some of it will be interesting. We're going to cover intonation, interrogatives, confirmation tags, interrogative tags, and inversion. Now you might just be starting off with questions, so feel free to stop this recording when you get to confirmation or interrogative or inversion, so that you're not overwhelmed. But for now, hang on tight, because we're going to talk about intonation. Intonation is basically your voice is going to go up at the end of a question to note that it's a question. It's like this internal way that every single language around the world recognizes that something's a question. All you have to do is say, make your voice go up at the end. So, do you like coffee? Is a statement, whereas, do you like coffee? Is a question. And notice when I said, do you like coffee in English? In French, I'm not going to use the do. It's just tu aimes le café. Similarly, tu veux inviter Jacques? I don't need, are you going to invite Jack? Or do you want to invite Jack? I don't need the do, I don't need the are, I just need a sentence. And then make my voice go up at the end. Now let's try that. Do you listen to Stromae? I don't need the do, I have you listen Stromae. Tu écoutes Stromae? You prefer the cups? Tu préfères les coupes? Tu aimes regarder la télé le week-end? Tu habites avec ta mère? Tu es extroverti? Notice each of these here in English is going to have do or are, but in French I don't. I just need to think, okay, who am I asking? What is the verb? Let's conjugate it for that. Now let's try something completely different. We're going to try some negative questions. First, we're going to talk about how to form the negative question, and then how to answer it. So, for example, instead of saying, you listen to Stromae, you would say, tu n'écoutes pas Stromae. Notice the negation goes in front of the verb and after the verb, wrapping it around like a sandwich. Tu ne préfères pas les coupes? Tu n'aimes pas regarder la télé le week-end? Tu n'habites pas avec ta mère? Tu n'es pas extroverti? Okay, so it's pretty easy to create the negative sentence. For each of these, even if we have two verbs, we're only going to wrap the negative around the verb that is conjugated. Now, to respond to a negative question is way more interesting. So in English, we just have yes and no. If somebody asks, you don't listen to Stromae, and you say yes, you're like, wait, yes, you do, or yes, you don't, what? In French, we have something called si. And si will contradict that negative question. No just agrees with it. So if I want to say, I don't listen to Stromae, I could say no. But if I want to contradict that and be like, no, he's awesome, I totally listen to him, I would say si. Same thing. Thing with préfère. Tu ne préfères pas les coupes? You don't prefer cups? Si, I prefer cups. Tu n'aimes pas regarder la télé le week-end? Si, I like to watch TV. Of course I do. Tu n'habites pas avec ta mère? Si, yes, of course I live with my mom. Tu n'es pas extraverti? Si, I am extroverted. So it's a wonderful thing, and here's some other examples of some sentences. Notice, each of these does not need do or are as they would in the English. To make them negative, all I have to do is put the ne and pas around the verb. To respond to them with contradictive statement, all I need is si. C'est super facile. So let's talk about some other questions that we might have. Things that would ask for more information, because all of those questions were yes or no questions, or si, non, even if you did negative. Now, you can answer parlez-vous français? Oui. But you can't answer oui or no to comment t'appelles-tu? That would just be silly. So let's talk about some of the questions you already know. Comment es-tu? What do you like? Comment est-il? Comment est-elle? Comment ça va? How are things going? Comment allez-vous? Quelle est la date? What's the date? Vous avez quel âge? How old are you? Tu as quel âge? C'est quand votre anniversaire? C'est quand ton anniversaire? When is your birthday? Notice we are using question words, les mots interrogatifs. Sorry, that's my son in the background. Each of these mots interrogatifs can be used to give us more information when we're writing our same sentence. We will still be using the same sentence structure for most of these with a subject, than our verb as well. Let's start off with qui, because this can also be a relative pronoun, so we'll see it in more places than just as a question word. Qui parle français? Moi, je parle français. And here's where we're using it as a relative pronoun. Est-ce que je suis le seul qui parle français? Am I the only one who speaks French here? I had to throw Lebowski in there. Just couldn't help it. Notice how it can be used here again as a relative pronoun. La vache qui rit, the cow who laughs. But it can also be a question. Qui aime le fromage? Qui déjeune avec nous cet après-midi? Qui joue de la guitare? And each of these questions, we have the question word and then a verb. Because qui is going to replace the subject. So qui is our subject, being who, and then the verb, and then the rest of our sentence. We do not need do, and we do not need are. Comment, we've seen several with comment, so these should be pretty easy. Comment meaning how. Okay, our first one we know, comment t'appelles-tu? This is easy. And we respond with je m'appelle. One that we haven't discussed enough in class is comment dit-on en français. So it's asking how would one say something in French. So comment dit-on homework en français? Well, comment dit-on homework en français? We respond with on dit les devoirs en français. It's very important. Let's try using this a little bit more in French class. Also with comment is comment est-il, meaning what is he like? We could respond with il est brun ou un talot, whatever adjective we want, because that's asking about his character qualities. Whereas comment ça va, using the verb aller, is more like how's it going? You could say bien, tu et vous, because ça va is invariable in that sense. Tu l'as trouvé comment? You found it how, or did you like it, or what did you think of it, basically? And you can answer with c'était super. So these are often common ways that we're going to see comment. Let's look at now at quand. Quand meaning when, but when we use it in a sentence, we're more likely to get a day. So nous dînons quand, like we're going to a dinner when, and we're likely to get like a day of the week. Same thing with quand est la classe de français. We're likely to get, oh, c'est lundi, mercredi. But when we ask for à quelle heure, at which hour, we're going to get a specific time. Quand can also be used in a sentence rather than a question. So, quand t'es blanc, tu dis, bien, amuse-toi, annule la mission, je répète, annule la mission. Here we have to remember that t'es blanc in Quebec can mean your petite amie. And when she says, hey, go have fun, cancel. Qu'est-ce que is a very interesting one. It's que and est-ce que. And we've heard it and we've seen it. Qu'est-ce que tu regardes? Qu'est-ce que c'est? What is this? What is that? But qu'est-ce que is made up of que, meaning what, and est-ce que, which is an inverted form of c'est que. We often use que with est-ce que because it allows us to go in the same order that we're used to going with intonation, which is subject, then verb, then object. Well, without the est-ce que, we're going to do something different. Que cannot take the place of the noun, so it's just an interrogative. Then we have our verb, and then we have our subject. So, que disent les Français après une blague nulle? C'est pas rigolo. What says the French after a dumb joke? It's not funny. But Paris and rigolo are locations, so it's funny. Que without the est-ce que has a different sense. It sounds almost as if everything is trying to be subjunctive. Que Dieu vous bénisse is a common expression. And so oftentimes we use est-ce que with que, even though que still means what. There's another twist to using que, which would be quoi. Quoi also means what. However, it's going to be placed in a different location. Let's take a look at some examples so I can show you what I mean. So, qu'est-ce que tu aimes? We have the qu'est-ce que. Est-ce que meaning nothing. It's just a question tag saying, hey, this is a question. Tu, subject, and then the verb, aime, mange, ou joue. When I take that away, when I take est-ce que away, I would need to invert it in order for me to still use que. Que aimes-tu? Que manges-tu? Que joues-tu? This is inversion, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. If I want to avoid aversion because it's kind of weird, a little complicated, a little bit more formal, I could just say, tu aimes quoi? Quoi can only go at the end of our questions unless we have a preposition in front of that. So, combien? Let's talk about how many. C'est combien? And this is a misspelling in order to avoid using a bad word, but it's pretty funny. Combien normally is with how much does this cost? Ça coûte combien? Very common expression that you would need. You would say ça coûte, it costs, and then however many euros. Also, il y a combien? There are how many. And notice we need of, and then a noun. Il y a combien de t-shirts? Ah, yes, it. Combien cannot really be used for age unless you're talking about, well, how many years did you live there? T'habitais là pour combien d'années? Ça fait, it was, and then however many years. If you want to ask for age again, you would use tu as quel âge or vous avez quel âge. Quel is interesting. It's actually an adjective. So it can be masculine, feminine, or masculine, feminine, plural, depending upon whatever which it's implying. So quel means which. So quel restaurant, quelle guitare, quel ordinateur, quelle chaise. Notice if you are already discussing it, you don't need a whole sentence here to get the point across. Where? Où est-ce que tu veux aller? And notice that we're saying où est-ce que, that question tag, tu veux, you want to go. I don't exactly need it. I can drop it, and that's okay. Tu veux aller où? Or où tu veux aller? And here I rewrote these because although in speech we do say t'as trouvé ça, you don't want to write that out in your French class because that's not spelled correctly, even though that's what it sounds like. So, où t'as trouvé ça? Je la cherche depuis toujours. Je l'ai fait moi-même. Pourquoi is great. It's almost though that you have to memorize two different words because every time you use why, you have because. So here's some fun questions. Pourquoi le poulet a traversé la rue? Why the chicken crossed the road? Pourquoi tu invites Jack? Why are you inviting Jack? Pourquoi le ciel est bleu? Why is the sky blue? La vacherie. Pourquoi la vacherie? Why is the cow laugh? Because it's a laughing cow cheese. Well, here's how we would respond. With parce que. Notice this is two words. Parce que il voulait être à l'autre côté. He wanted to be on the other side. Parce qu'il est beau, because he's handsome. I don't know why the sky is blue, so with my kids would ask, I'd probably say, mais parce que. Just because. And here's several different reasons for why the cow might be laughing. And they are pretty funny. Est-ce que, we just talked about est-ce que. It is not exactly meaning anything when it's used as a question. It is just a tag, right? Like we mentioned, we can use it, we use it a lot for que, est-ce que, if we want to not invert the verb and subject order. But it's just a tag. It doesn't mean anything. I could take this out of most of them and they would still be a question. It's just like saying, hey, I'm a question. But similarly with confirmation tags. So confirmation tags is another way of saying, isn't that right? N'est-ce pas? Or d'accord. These would be yes or no questions. Now inversion is a lot more complicated and we're going to so quickly go over this. Normally in our sentence we saw subject, verb, and then an object. When we invert it, we're taking that order that you want, where we're changing it up. We're marrying them by putting a bar between and they're putting a ring on it. Similarly, when we're using the past tense, t'as vu le film? We're going to say, as-tu vu le film? We take that first conjugated verb and we marry them. We put a ring on it. So here's several more examples. Putting a ring on it. We're just taking that subject and then putting the verb front, putting a ring on it. Verb, ring, subject. With est-ce in there, we just drop that completely and we find the verb and then the subject. Put a ring on it. Even if we have two verbs, we only use that first verb, the, and a ring on it. It's pretty simple. Now, inversions with pronouns can be a little bit more complicated. I want you to think of the pronoun like professeur being the subject. It's really big. It's not a short pronoun. It's like a hawk trying to carry all this big thing. It can't do it. It can't fly. So I don't want to say sont les professeurs stricts. I want to use a pronoun instead as my replace les professeurs with something tiny, like a tiny fish of il. Then I can put a ring on it. Sont-ils stricts? I can even repeat the subject. Les professeurs sont-ils stricts? And that works just as well. So basically, when we invert something, put the subject first, or sorry, the verb first, and then the subject, we put a ring on it. Things that have two vowels in a row, we're going to put a T in the middle. So it's dash T dash, that's a super big ring. That's beautiful. Just like where we can't say bo-om, we have to say bel-om. We don't two vowel sounds in a row because that's gross.